Hello everyone and welcome to another patch notes breakdown video from Sunbros. Today I'm hanging out with Kiro-san and we're here to talk about patch 2.3. How's it going?
Pretty good. A lot of changes coming up.
A lot of changes. Let's get started because it is going to be a long one, guys. Two new champions, Riven and Irelia. We will make separate videos discussing the new heroes, but they are both being released, as you can see down here, on June 3rd, so prepare yourselves for that. Some new features. They have close friend features coming in. We're going to post a link to the patch notes in the video description as always, so you guys can check out some of these more minute details to your heart's consent. We're not going to go over them too deeply in this. They have friend subscriptions. ARAM is returning. This is a good one. In ranked champ select, players can switch their draft order to better accommodate comfort picks and counter picking. I love that. Y'all know I want to pick last and counter pick the jungle as often as possible. Some new network tool stuff, 4G Wi-Fi stuff coming in. Awesome. There's also a ton of changes happening to the runes. We're going to make a separate video discussing the rune changes, so be on the lookout for that. So upcoming videos, we have a video on Riven coming out, a video on Irelia coming out. We have a video on the rune changes coming out. So keep an eye out on those this week. We're going to drop all the knowledge for you guys to keep up with what's going on in the game. Some skins coming out. We have Order of the Lotus Irelia, Arcade Riven, Arcade Kai'Sa, Arcade Sona, and Battle Boss 6. Arcade skins are always a win. Kira, how do you feel about the new skins coming out?
I always like the arcade skins. Some of them are really good, so having 3 more arcade skins is going to be cool. And Battle Boss 6 is also a really good skin. It's not my favorite of the Battle Boss skins, but which is probably Blitzcrank, but and Veigar, but the Battle Boss 6 is a cool one. So those will be some new additions to the game. Good additions there.
We got some new accessories. I love the joystick one here we got. The cool little joystick bobble. We have a couple swords, a sword and some blades. We have whatever the crap that is. Some cool stuff coming out. So that we have a new event coming out for Riven and Irelia. You get to unlock one of them for free. Champion changes. This is the part everyone wants to get to. There's a lot of stuff about Akali that's changing. I'm going to let Kiro kick it off for us with some Akali changes.
Yeah, so everywhere on Reddit, Twitter, everywhere, YouTube, everyone's asking for an Akali nerf, and they're finally getting one. Kind of. No. For the most part, it is a nerf, but they're making some changes to some of her third and her ult that will kind of balance things out a little bit. So we'll get right into it. Base health, they're reducing it, and then also they're increasing the HP per level. So that'll reduce her early game health pool, but in the late game, it's gonna balance out. The total HP will be 2260 and increase to 2320, so an extra 60 health at the max level. Armor is going to scale down, so they go 35 down to 30. And then her 5-point strike, they're increasing the energy on that, so from 95 to 130 on the first level, and then you can see it's going down by 10 on level 4. So they're reducing the early, increasing how often she can do it on the late side of that. Twilight Shroud restores 80 energy, and they're also increasing the total energy by 80 when Shroud is active. And then for Shuriken Flip, here's a lot of changes that they're doing here. So they're reducing the damage on the Shuriken base, so on the poke for the Shuriken landing. They're also reducing the AD ratio and also reducing the AP ratio. So an overall nerf on the Shuriken when it lands. But then on the dash, they're increasing that. So they're reducing the damage of the poke, increasing the damage of her all-in when she actually goes in. But it balances out overall. So it's going from, when you combine it, 40 plus 40 is 80 for the Shuriken base and the dash, but they're on level 1, but it's going from 30 to 70, 30 plus 70 to 100. So they're increasing the overall damage of both of them, but the just landing the Shuriken base is going down, also scaling down the AD and AP ratio. The dash is also increasing the AD ratio from 0.35 to 0.5, and then the AP ratio is increasing from 0.5 to 0.8. And now on her ult, some big changes here. The biggest change, obviously, they're changing it from physical damage to magic damage. Completely changing the damage type on her ult. Then they're adding the first cast AP ratio to as a 0.3 scaling. And then on the second cast, they're reducing the AP ratio on 0.5 down to 0.4. And then the max change will be 1.5 down to 1.2 on the max level for her ult. So those are big changes there. It looks like they're taking away some of her hybrid, moving her maybe more of an AP-based build because of the ult change for the whole damage going from physical to magic. And then also they're reducing her poke by reducing the shuriken damage, but still increasing the overall damage when she goes all in. So the dash is kind of making her more of an assassin, less of a poke type there.
Yeah, so they're forcing her to do two things. They're forcing Akali players. Well, first of all, they're removing some of her early game ability. She's going to be a lot less tanky early on, and she's also going to be. She's got her base HP's going down, her base armor's going down, but they're going to end up around the same in the end. The energy cost for 5-point strike is going up early game, but it's going down late game. So they're going to make her much, I think, much less potent early, but actually more potent late game. So that's interesting. And then her shuriken flip, just as Kiro said, it does more damage overall if you land both components of it. But on the flip side, the poke is reduced because they don't want, nobody wants Akali to be a poke champion. She's an assassin. She needs to go in if she wants to do real damage. And that's what they're forcing her to do. And then, so interesting changes for Akali. This is really considered a rework because all 5 things, not her passive, but her base stats, her first ability, second ability, third ability, and ultimate were all changed. So next we're moving on to Blitzcrank. 2 things they did to Blitzcrank. They changed the passive cooldown of Mana Barrier from 80 to 50 seconds, which is an enormous reduction. And then they're changing the cooldown to Overdrive from 15 to 12 seconds. Now, I think they're going to find that this breaks Blitzcrank quite a bit because what it does is early game, remember, it's a passive, so he doesn't have to do anything to get it. Early game, having a 50-second cooldown on that passive Mana Barrier, it's very often when Blitzcrank's able to escape because his Mana Barrier pops, he flashes, he hits his second ability going into overdrive, and he escapes. Well, when that cooldown is 80 seconds, you don't have that up every single time you fight, and necessarily to protect you and help you get away as Blitzcrank. But now having it at 50 seconds, not only is it nearly half the amount of time it used to be, but it's just going to be in a lot more fights. 50 seconds is low enough time now to where pretty much every fight early game that a smart Blitzcrank gets into, he's going to have this passive to help him get out, and he's going to have a second ability overdrive to help him escape. So not a huge fan of this. I don't think Blitzcrank's underpowered, and I think they may have just made him a little bit overpowered in lane early.
Yeah, that reduction is huge, like you said, and it'll be a whole lot harder to punish Blitzcrank because you burn that first Mana Barrier, then you have basically a minute and a half before he gets it back, so you can really punish him. But getting it back every 50 seconds, you won't be able to extend that punishment out as long, and he'll have it basically every fight, like you said.
Right. Next we have Camille, and this is just a quality of life thing for Camille. When she tap casts her hook shot, it detects terrain in front of her and fires towards it. If you tap cast and there's no terrain in front of Camille, they will not fire. So just some quality of life updates for Camille. Next we're on to Darius, and it's pretty simple. He's getting his early game attack damage gained at full stacks from his passive Noxian Might reduced. You see at level 1 it's 20. It used to be 29, now it's going to be 22. By the end it's actually going to be better. By level 15 it's actually going to be higher. So
yeah, well, by 1.
By 1.
But early game they're really nerfing him, yeah. That early game nerf, because you notice it's 7, and then on the second one they're reducing it by 13. And then on the third level they're reducing it by, what's that, 30? Yeah, it's huge. So they're really nerfing that early game damage. So he's
at level 4.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to build or snowball as easily, landing those full stacks.
Yep, for sure. It's lower all the way up to level 14. So it's going to make it harder for Darius to snowball, which we can all be in favor for. Next, we're moving on to Diana. Obviously, I'm a Diana player, so this interests me. Base health reduced from 610 to 570. Passive Moonsilver Blade AP ratio is reduced from 0.6 to 0.5. And the damage on the ult is reduced by 25 at each level for the minimum and 50 at each level for the maximum. Now, one of the concepts that I frequently talk about is to know when the hero is broken is when somebody who isn't very skilled on that hero can play them and still be very good. In a perfect world, heroes are balanced so that players who are very good at those heroes can have very good games. If someone who's not very good on a hero plays them and has a very good game still, then it's likely that the hero is a little bit broken. And that was the case with Diana. And part of the reason why is because her ultimate did so much damage that people will just go in ult and they kill people. Well, I think the reduction is warranted. I think it's needed. And I don't think it's going to break Diana. I think it's going to expose the bad Diana players a little bit more than they were before. I'm not worried as a person who plays Diana regularly. Her kit is still complete enough, and I'm still good enough at the completion of her kit that this won't affect me very much.
Yeah, and just looking at like the AP ratio changing from 0.6 to 0.5, like you mentioned, it's might change how you build her, where you might give her more attack speed so she procs the passive more often.
So let me explain that for people who don't understand how the passive works. Kiro and I were talking about this for the video. Her passive is it gives you attack speed, and it also makes it so that every 3 or 4 attacks she has an empowered attack. I believe it's 4. And so the AP is reduced, and that doesn't necessarily mean a reduction in damage. It just might mean a change in how she's built. You may be more inclined now to build her with attack speed, so you get that proc on her passive more often, even though it'll do less damage. You might be able to make it equal out to not being very different. So overall, obviously, it is a slight nerf, but I think it can be built around by good Diana players. People who know how to make builds. All right, next talk about Fizz. And their issue with Fizz is that he isn't a jungler, even though I played him in the jungle a bunch, and they want to make him a jungler so that he has more role flexibility. So what are they doing? They're increasing his passive's damage by 200% to neutral monsters. So for those of you who don't know, Fizz's passive, what it does is it does match damage over time. Every time Fizz attacks people. So that's going to be excellent, and I'm definitely going to be playing a lot more Fizz, because my issue with the Fizz jungle is not Fizz himself. It's just that he felt like he couldn't get built, he couldn't get fed fast enough to really be a big difference maker all the time. Unless you got a ton of early kills, he couldn't farm fast enough to really make it in the jungle.
Yeah, it's like, and the only times you did well with him was when you like basically killed someone every time you went into a lane.
Right.
So if you weren't getting fed built early on, you just were way behind on gold and items. And this is just giving you ability to farm up quicker, at 200% damage. That's a big change. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And so the next thing that's going to happen here is mana reduction on Playful Trickster, the third ability. That is the ability that makes Fizz untargetable. So really, really great. Mana reduction at 10 per level, and then a cooldown reduction at half a second per level. And then they adding base damage in the early part. So it's going to be 15 at level 1, 10 at level 2, 5 at level 3, and then even at level 4. But overall, a big buff to Fizz's best ability, and they're going to make it more viable in the jungle. Count me in to do some more Fizz jungle action and see what we got with these changes. Next, we're talking about Garen, and who better to talk about Garen than the Garen man himself. Kiro, take us through the changes.
Yeah, so if you play Bear Lane, or if you played at all in the last month or so, then you know that Garen's really strong right now, especially in the Baron lane. Just because you don't have to build any tank items, and he can still, one-shot you early on, basically, go all in, 100 to 0, kill you. So what they're doing is they're reducing his tankiness, and then they're also going to increase the cooldown on his ultimate. So for the base stats, his health growth is going from 135 down to 125. And then armor growth is going down from 6.4 to 5.8. So that's actually pretty big changes, especially scaling later on in the game. And then for his ult, 65 seconds, like we were talking about Blitzcrank, having something 50 seconds, you basically have it every fight. With early game in the lane, Garen, when he would 100 to 0 you, go push the minions under tower, backs. By the time he gets back in lane, he basically has his ult back for the next fight. So increasing that from 65 to 80 seconds is a big difference. So if you ult early on, then you might not have it for that Rift Herald, fight or for trying to secure the Scuddler. So that's a big deal. Actually, I think it's going to change. And it's also going to change how you build him too, because they're also nerfing Deadman's Plate that we'll read about earlier, which is basically a guaranteed item you have to get on Garen if you're playing tank with him. So.
All right, so interesting changes on Garen. Next, we're moving on to Gragas. Simple, easy, second ability, Drunken Rage. They're reducing the amount of damage reduction that he has by 2% per level, and the damage, the maximum HP damage, by 1%. It's really simple to figure out why. Gragas' ability to hit Drunken Rage, go in, hit somebody for 8% of the health, and then dash out without taking very much punishment. It was too much reward and too little risk, and now they're turning the tables a little bit to see if they can stop some Gragas from doing that all they want. So, interesting change. Next, we're moving on to Kennen. Kennen's first ability, Thundering Shuriken. They are upping the damage 10 per level, and then his second ability, Electrical Surge, they're reducing the cooldown 3 seconds at level 1, 2 seconds at level 2, 1 second at level 3, and even at level 4. So some buffs to Kennen. Interesting. Any thoughts on Kennen's changes?
No, he's hardly ever picked, so maybe this will just increase his pick rate, just because he's really hard to to be effective early on, and those buffs will help him out there.
Okay, next we've got Kha'Zix. Really simple, his passive. So Kha'Zix gets some buffs when he is isolated against an enemy. They're reducing the range that the game considers Kha'Zix to be isolated from 400 to 300. Very simple. They're moving on to Pantheon. Now, I'm actually going to go to Pantheon in game because I believe the patch changes have gone live. I want to see exactly how this reads.
In battle,
okay, so the difference is only one thing. They're adding an armor pen piece to his ultimate. Now, we were not able to tell immediately what that meant. Does that mean it's a passive, and just by having his ult purchased that you're going to get the armor penetration? Or was it when he lands, he causes an armor penetration to everyone around him? So we're going to find out exactly how it is a passive, armor pen passive on the ultimate. So that's really interesting, and I think it actually changes Pantheon altogether as a hero. And I'm very interested in trying him in the jungle now, because that is a big deal, I think. It's a really big deal. So, what do you think, Kiro?
Yeah, that penetration there is, and that answers our question of what it did, and that's a big change, man. Armor penetration. Nothing more, nothing less. But that 10, 15, 20% at level 3, that's a big change. That's really going to impact his dive in, and it's going to really affect those tanks, that stack all that armor.
Yep. All right, next we are looking at Rakan. They increase his base magic damage. They increase his magic resistance per level. So that at level 15, he's going to have 50.8 instead of 41. And they're going to reduce the cooldown of his passive Feathers slightly. A little bit each level. So basically, he's getting a small buff, specifically against AP damage. Then we're on to Rammus. Base armor per level has gone down from 5.1 to 4.7. And armor at level 15, the difference will be 6 total armor. And so they didn't like his jungle clear. They said his jungle clear was too slow early game. So they're increasing the damage of his second ability, Spike Shell, from 5 to 8. And then by level 2, it's already back down. It's already back to even at 10. And then it actually goes down to 12 and down to 14 instead of 15 and 20. So it's an early game buff, overall nerf. I don't play Rammus for his damage, so giving me a little bit better jungle clear, still letting me be super tanky, have lots of crowd control, I'm for it. I think this is an absolutely fine nerf. Next, we're moving on to Renekton. So, Kira, I'll let you cover the Renekton changes, since you've been playing quite a bit of him lately.
Yeah, so for Renekton, he's got some matchups that are really good for him, but for the most part, he just felt really underwhelming, especially with his early game damage. So that's where they're focusing on these buffs here. So increasing his base AD from 64 to 70, and then his first ability on Cold and Meek, they're increasing it all the way through. So not just early on, but all the way through. So on the on-hit heal, they're increasing it by 50% per level. So it's going from 4 to 6, and then 6 to 9, 8 to 12, 10 to 15. And that's also, think about that's per person you hit. So if you do a big sweep and hit a lot of minions and enemies, you're going to get a lot more health from that. And then the base damage, they're increasing it from 60 to 70. It looks like it's 10 at every level. And then they're also increasing the bonus AD ratio as well. So not only are they increasing the base damage of it, they're increasing the ratio you get from your damage items. And then for the enhanced base damage, that's also going up 15 per level. And then for the enhanced bonus, AD ratio is going up from 120% to 135%. So that is a big change early on. I think just about everyone starts with the S1 for the first ability level. And so the Cold Meek there is really going to increase that early game poke, where you can punish people that go in on him, because it was really easy to go in on him, before his last buff, and now they're buffing him again. So I think it'll just make him more consistent in lane, give him that early game poke, allows him to have that, maybe give him a better chance to snowball, which is really what Renekton does best, is when he gets a chance to snowball.
Alright, so some nice buffs to Renekton. Next, we're moving on to Twisted Fate, who's getting an interesting change. Not technically a buff, but not a nerf. So, currently, his third ability, Stack Deck, when you activate it, you get an attack speed bonus of 55, 70, 85, and 100%. Well, now, they're making some of that attack speed into a passive 15, 20, 25, and 30% attack speed bonus passively, and then you're still going to get the active bonuses of 40, 50, 60, 70%. And as you can see, if you do the math, it adds up to the same number, but some of that will be passive, so you have it all the time. So
yeah, so the active bonus is the same as it was before, but you have the passive bonus, so you get a little bit, of all the time. So that'll probably help with jungle clear when you like to play Twist of Fate jungle. But also give him that little bit of
it helps him as a marksman.
Overall damage.
Overall. It makes him a better
marksman. Yeah, so. Definitely.
All right, next we're moving on to the changes to Wukong. His first ability, Golden Staff, the cooldown has been increased, not at level 1, but half a second at level 2, a full second at level 3, and a second and a half at level 4. They've added a new feature to that ability, which now heals for 10% of the bonus HP that Wukong has. And then attacks from Wukong and his clone now reduce Golden Staff's cooldown by half a second. So big buffs all around. Even though the cooldown is increased, you can now reduce the cooldown. So obviously it's going to be less overall. And then the second ability, Warrior Trickster, the cooldowns have been increased 2 seconds at level 1, 3 at level 2, 4 at level 3, and 5 at level 4. So, interesting changes to Wukong. Next, we're moving on to Xin Zhao. They're doing a lot of changes now. They're reducing his base AD. They're reducing the base heal amount to his passive determination from 9.6 to 60 to 6.8 to 60. So, early game, that's going to be going down. They are reducing the damage of his first ability, 3 Talon Strike, by 5 per level. His second ability, Wind Becomes Lightning, is getting quite a bit of changes. So really, you could call this a rework for Xin Zhao as well. It's a lot of changes, just like Akali.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the second biggest changes to a single champ behind Akali. I think Akali's getting more changes. These are kind of like interesting, weird changes, but I guess you could say he actually is getting the biggest changes if you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, Sweep and Strike now hit slightly behind Xin Zhao for Wind Becomes Lightning. The strike range is increased from 6 to 8. The cooldown is actually decreased at level 2, 3, and 4. And then the second hit AD ratio is going down. Now here's the part that's interesting. Is second strike now challenges champions monsters and provides vision of that target for 3 seconds. If multiple targets are hit, the furthest from Xin Zhao is the one that is challenged. Minion damage is reduced by 50% for this ability. Then the third ability, Audacious Charge, can now... They've increased the range of the charge against challenged targets. So they're adding a whole new aspect to Xin Zhao's game. And they're also increasing the AP ratio from 60 to 80%. So that it actually appears as though they're going to be making him more of a hybrid player. They do that again in its Ultimate Crescent Guard, where they have a new piece now that AP ratio 80%. It went from 0 to 80%. So building with some AP now is a lot more interesting than it used to be. The other aspect is they're decreasing the damage of Crescent Guard, 25 at level 2 and 50 at level 3. And then the duration of Crescent Guard's ability to block damage is increased from 3 to 5 seconds. And they removed basic attacks and spells extend Crescent Guard's duration. So 5 seconds is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, that's an interesting change too, because even though they're reducing the damage, you know, the base damage of his ult, that adding that AP ratio to 80%, if you're building hybrid or even straight AP, you're going to get that damage back, and probably more so. And then what I want to know too is, so when it says strike now challenges champions monsters, and then the furthest target is challenged. So if there's a monster that's further away from a champion, will it challenge the monster instead of the champion, or is it going to always prioritize the champions? That'll be interesting.
We'll have to see that when it comes to, but that's an interesting point.
So, yeah, well, yeah, like you said, we'll just have to see when that comes about, because sometimes those you don't know until you actually get into the game and try it.
Right. Next, we have Ziggs. Passive damage to structures reduced from 200% to 150%. We all saw that coming. There's a lot of ARAM changes. We're not going to go over them. I will put a link to this in the description so you guys can check them out yourself. Then we have some gameplay changes, specifically to items. First is Black Cleaver. The Black Cleaver is being overshadowed by Trinity Force too often. So they up the attack damage by 5. They increase the armor reduction per stack from 4% to 5%. They reduce the max stacks from 6 to 5. So now the total armor reduction at 5 stacks, the full stacks, is 25% instead of 24, but you're going to get there faster also. So really nice buffs to Black Cleaver.
Yeah, there's a lot of champs that start with Black Cleaver just by default, and they're all going to get buffed, basically. It's just kind of a shadow buff, if you will, for this change.
All right, and next we're moving on to Dead Man's Plate, which is getting a pretty solid nerf. Their health is being reduced from 300 to 225. And then we have the Duskblade of Drakthar, which is getting an increase of attack damage from 50 to 55. Some nice changes to Maul of Malmortius, which is probably one of the least seen items in the game. They're reducing the price from 3,200 to 3,000 and increasing the magic resistance from 35 to 45. I'm not gonna lie to you. If I'm playing a damage dealer and I am facing 2 to 3 people who do magic damage, I am going to be a lot more likely to buy Maul of Malmortius now than I was before. So good changes all around to that. And the last item being changed is Trinity Force. They're reducing the attack speed from 40% to 30%. It's no longer the highest attack speed item in the game. What are your overall thoughts on the changes to the items?
Yeah, well, a lot of these items are, except for the Duskblade of Drakthar, they're regular items for, well, except for Maw as well, for top lane. So they're really all these changes to the Baron lane champs, plus these, this might be a whole new Baron lane in this patch. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
It's true, and yeah, you might buy Maul of Malmortius now when playing against people like Malphite and Gragas.
Yeah, well, think so. This is a hybrid defense and offense tool for the Maul Malmortius. I wonder if you'll see more like that be a standard item for someone like Xin Zhao too, because of the AP changes to his ult.
Yep, that could definitely be. All right, now we're gonna have a bunch of changes to the runes in the game, and there's enough changes to the runes that we're gonna make a whole separate video about it, so keep your eyes out for that one. We're gonna keep going down as we get to the extra bits, and there's some good things here. Champion bounties are now displayed on the scoreboard. Great. Ally item cooldowns are now displayed on the scoreboard. Awesome. In rank, the scoreboard is automatically going to be sorted by the based on position selected. That's great. Improve the lane guidance UI in ranked. Awesome. Players will receive a notification in the chat box when allies disconnect. Phenomenal. Opening the settings menu will now reopen you to the page you were last accessing. Perfect. Increase the distance needed to cancel an action by 20% when using the alternative action cancel method setting. And then improve loading into game from lobby by approximately 20%. Improve video stuttering issues for low-end devices. I mean, guys, I'll let you guys finish these off, but the matter of fact is this is a game that gives you quality of life changes. These are things that most game developers wouldn't care about fixing, but Riot is always looking to make the game better, and these little changes are things that show that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Even just like improving the game loading into the lobby by 20%. Like, I didn't really have any complaints of that, but hey, that's nice.
Yeah, I'll take it. All right, guys, and last but not least, of course, is the free-to-play champion rotation. June 3rd through June 9th, we have Aurelion, Sol, Dr. Mudo, Galio, Gragas, Graves, Leona, Nami, Singed, Tristana, and Vayne. And June 10th to June 16th, we have Amumu, Fiora, Jin, Kennen, Lee Sin, Lulu, Misfortune, Sona, Twisted Fate, and Ziggs. Guys, that is going to be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the latest patch breakdowns video for patch 2.3. Be on the lookout for that Rune patch breakdown video, the video for Riven, the video for Aurelia, and a soon to be coming out how to build Diana video. Guys, thank you for watching, and as always, until next time.